As they head down south on the raft, the temperatures rise. Huck realizes that he is very far away from home. The king and the duke go back to their old ways and try to make up scams. Huck and Jim decide to decline the offer when they are asked if they want to join. The king goes ashore and does not come back for a long time. The Huck and Duke decide to go and look for him. They end up finding him at the bar. The Duke gets angered and starts a fight with the king, and at that moment, Huck runs away. Huck tried to flee to the raft, but Jim is not there upon his arrival. Huck went searching for Jim and asked the local if he knew where he was. He said Jim was captured by Silas Phelps because he is a runaway slave, but in actuality, the king had turned him in. Huck was filled with anger. He decided to write a letter to Miss Watson, but later then decided to tear the paper up. He decided to head towards Phelps' farm to try and steal Jim out of slavery. Along his journey to the farm, On the way to Phelps' farm, Huck continued to talk about how he wished he was dead. Although he wishes he was dead, he puts his faith in Providence. Huck finally arrives to Phelps' farm with no plan in mind. He gets surrounded by dogs. The slaves begin to come out to shoo away the dogs. Huck is greeted by a white lady by the name of Aunt Sally. They welcome Huck by the name of Tom Sawyer. Aunt Sally introduces Huck to Uncle Silas. Huck is introduced as Tom Sawyer, which is Aunt Sally's nephew, that they had been expecting his arrival. Aunt Sally was so happy about his arrival and began to ask him so many questions. Huck explained that he was late due to an explosion that was on his boat. Huck is happy to be Tom Sawyer, but nervous for when Tom actually arrives. Huck decides to leave the Phelps farm in search of Tom Sawyer. Chapter 33 starts off with Huck meeting Tom's wagon coming down the road. Tom is confused at first because he thought Huck was dead and that he was seeing his ghost. This comes as a surprise to Huck, but Tom agrees to help him free Jim. Tom goes with Huck back to the Phelps house. The family is happy to see that they have another guest. During dinner, Tom kisses his aunt, and she almost slaps him because she is shocked, and she thinks that it's impolite for a stranger to do that. The two boys hope to hear about the runaway slave being held on their property, but it's not brought up. However, one of the boys mentions that he wants to see a show passing through town, and the reply was that a runaway slave told them it was a con. Later that night, Huck and Tom sneak out of the house. As they are walking, they see an angry mob of people running after the Duke and the King. Although the King and the Duke were not good people, Huck still felt bad, and said that a conscience is useless because it always makes you feel bad.
Tom remembers seeing a black man delivering food to a shed on the Phelps property earlier that evening and discovers that that shed is where Jim is being held. His perspective observation impresses Huck, who hatches a plan to free Jim by stealing the key to the shed and making off with Jim by night. Tom belittles this plan for its simplicity and lack of showmanship. Tom then comes up with a wild plan that Huck admits is 15 times more stylish than his own. It might even get all three of them killed. Meanwhile, Huck finds it hard to believe that respectable Tom is going to sacrifice his reputation by helping a slave escape. Tom sees that the Phelps have taken precaution to guard Jim, and there are going to be many obstacles they need to overcome in order for them to help Jim escape. Tom says they are going to have to saw the chain off of Jim instead of lifting off the bed frame like they do in all the books. Tom and Huck are going to have to dig and make an underground tunnel in order for Jim to escape. While Huck and Tom are walking, Huck steals a watermelon from the slave's garden, which makes Tom mad since it isn't a necessity for survival, so Huck gives the slaves a dime for compensation.